Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our 3-star clear series. Today, we are progressing into the final area of our Infinity Rifts. And these are the rifts that were introduced at the end of the DLC, the Omega Rifts. And boy, do these ones have a lot of fun mechanics to offer. So let's go ahead and jump into the different rifts that we'll be looking at. We will be breaking these down in segments with about 5 or 6 rifts a day until we have them all taken care of. And the first 5 that we will be facing off against are going to be the 5 that are down in that little V shape right in about the center of the screen. So if you enjoy or find today's video helpful, please feel free to leave it a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily content. So without further ado, let's jump into the rifts of today's video. And we are going to be starting off with the level 60 boss wave rift, where we will be facing off against a couple of different bosses with a few of the grunts that are sprinkled in for good taste. The first boss that we are taking on is Loki. He goes down fairly easily, after which there will be a couple of small grunt characters, mainly some of the Hydra agents with the Rainbow ISO 8 enhancement, and they are necessary for taking out the Destroyer armor and making sure that you can rip through him, because he takes little to no damage if you do not have one of those ISO crystal enhancements. When the Destroyer goes down, we will then be joined by both Obsidian and Juggernaut, and they are big powerhouses that run all over this small arena. So just kind of be cautious as you're walking into the fight with them, and be familiar with the attacks that they can throw out, such as that spinning axe attack from Obsidian. The only other hazard that you need to be aware of is Hela is there in the background. She does throw a couple of attacks out in the form of projectiles across the arena, but apart from that, there's nothing super challenging about this as long as you're familiar with the mechanics. To get the full clear here, you'll need to get through the trial once. You'll also need to get through the trial in 4 minutes or less, as well as get through the trial with losing 1 teammate or fewer in the course of the fight. And as you saw, that's exactly what we did, so there are our 3 stars. The next rift that we are looking at is another level 60 rift. It is going to be the survival rift, where the end objective is defeating Viking souls. This portion of the rift has a quirk where as you fight, your HP will drop slowly, but you can revive your teammates back up by dealing damage to the opponents in the area. In order to get the full clear here, there are a couple things you need to keep in mind. This first section is conducive to one of those clear conditions because you have to defeat 40 enemies, and the only 40 enemies that spawn in here, in order to clear out and move forward into the next section. So the 3 clear conditions here is getting through the trial while defeating all enemies on the board, and also finishing in 5 minutes or less. Now, because I speedrun this game, you're going to see me use the tactic that I generally do when clearing this out, and that is in this section. I tend to skirt around it or skirt past it as quickly as I can. That does not work in this context if you are looking for the full clear, because there are opponents or enemies that are scattered in throughout here that you need to be able to take down. There's 3 of them in there, there's another 2 or 3 up here on the top, and then 3 more of the large grunt type enemies down there at the bottom. There are a couple more enemies down here, and several more stretching across this bridge over to Castle Hela, which you'll need to take out. And the 4 that are further down on this bridge are included in the count of the 20 enemies that need to be defeated later on. I was hoping to get a couple members of my team to warp to where Thanos is, because that is a game mechanic, but apparently it either does not work in this particular section of the game, or I was not far enough ahead in order to have my teammates warp to where I am. That being said, I had forgotten whether or not one of the clear conditions we were looking for included making sure that none of our opponents went down, or none of our teammates went down, I should say. And that is not the case, but I was a little paranoid and didn't want to lose any of my teammates where I could avoid it. So back to my kind of my speedrunning strat here. You'll see me jump down this walkway, and I actually skip past some of these guys as we make our way across. And as soon as you come around to these last of these rock formations here, you'll have the gate close up, which you will then need to take out the different grunts and enemies that are in here as well. Things that tend to work well when doing this fight is using Thanos' gravity surge and then pounding into your opponents with a couple of heavy attacks, because even these mighty enemies can be affected by his gravity surge as long as they're not a mini-boss, which none of these characters that we're looking at currently are. And that makes things pretty straightforward and simple. We'll just layer in a couple of additional synergy attacks here. And then if you ever are looking for the last opponent that you're needing to take down, you can take a glance over to the mini-map over on the right, and you will be notified as to their position by the glowing red dot that's on the map as to an enemy that is still hostile and needs taking out. The third rift that we're looking at today is the level 60 Extreme Trial Rift. And this rift is one where you have to deal extreme attack damage in order to deal any meaningful damage whatsoever. And that includes to the hazards of the room, such as this generator. So you do see that I am taking a bunch of hits semi-deliberately from some of these items, because we are dealing the absolute minimum amount of damage to this core computer as we are layering into it. Sometimes I would advise against using some of your synergies and other things in attacking this, but we're looking to make sure that we build up our extreme gauge as quickly as we can and then detonate those attacks right into this core computer to make sure that we get through it as quickly as possible. It's not optimal, and I don't recommend this type of behavior whenever you are in a standard rift or trying to take things down. But because of the nature of this rift, it is the best thing in this very specific circumstance. We don't need to defeat all of the other enemies for our clear conditions, so we can just zip right along to the final boss chamber and confront Ronan. Now here, as we go through this fight, I'll just point out the clear conditions that we're looking for the full clear here. There's nothing really that different about the Ronan fight, as all of his mechanics operate in the exact same manner as you're familiar with from previous encounters with him. But for here, we need to get through the trial. We need to clear it out. We also need to get through without having any teammates incapacitated, which can be a little bit of a struggle against Ronan because he has very heavy-hitting, large area of effect attacks that can be devastating to have to worry about. And then the fourth and then to get that third star, we will need to get through this in 4 minutes and 10 seconds or less, which you can definitely hit with an increased efficiency if you are not taking the time to take out all of the enemies on that stairwell at the beginning of this fight. I've had a couple of less than fortunate detonations of my extreme attacks here into Ronan. Ideally, you should have to use 1, maybe 2 extreme attacks on him per cycle of the fight. But as you'll see here, with our localized detonations for all of those extreme attacks, we did finally get him down into his second phase. And this portion of the fight should hopefully go a lot quicker. I'm really trying to make sure that I stay out of the way of a lot of his attacks, especially those large lightning strikes that he sends out, because they tend to deal a lot of damage. But again, you don't really need to worry about a whole lot if you have the Vitality Mastery in effect, where you will heal back damage that has been taken during the extreme attacks that you deal. So the only other thing we've got to do is build up our extreme gauge one final time, go ahead and detonate a extreme attack right on top of Ronan, and that should be enough to take him out. And as you'll see here, it absolutely is. Unfortunately, there seems to be something buggy about Thanos Infinite's extreme attack, where it sometimes doesn't trigger the way that it's intended to, but it was late enough in the fight where it really didn't cause that much of a problem for me here. Moving along to the fourth rift of today's video, we find ourselves in a situation of the level 61 countdown rift in Wakanda. And this one is actually pretty straightforward in terms of what the requirement is. We'll need to layer into a couple of these obstacles in here to take them out. But I do also think that it's beneficial to take some time at the very least to take out a couple of the enemies here and remove them from play. mainly because this is one of those rifts, because it's a countdown style. There are only 60 seconds on the clock, and the only way to gain or extend your time is to deal damage to and take out enemies around you. So as you see here, I'm trying to focus as much as I can on these little energy terminals that are safekeeping the progression gates. And in this section, there are 2 of them that we'll need to take out. You'll see me transition over to another one here over to the left, and you're familiar with the placement on that if you've played through the main story quest. While I finish out this section before we go into the final room, I do want to talk about the clear conditions here, because that's what we're here to go over. We need to make sure that we're through the trial for the 1-star clear. We need to make sure we have a minute or more on the timer, listed as time remaining, for that 2nd-star clear. And this is the first rift that I've seen where it wants you to get through a clear with an excess amount of time on the timer and under a certain time limit. So the other condition here is going to be clearing out this rift in 3 minutes and 40 seconds or less. Now, I am taking a little bit of time to layer some of my attacks into this turret, mainly because it's the one that can hit any and all members of my team, no matter where they are. This is another one that tends to be a little bit problematic, but I think I do end up leaving the final turret in place because it's far enough out of the way that I don't really need to worry too much about it. At this stage, I'm wanting to make sure that I'm layering my attacks into the different grunts that are available here, whether they're just standard enemies or the mighty ones, and then layering into Spider-Gwen there with that heavy attack. Also make sure that we get her taken down, and you are awarded time even when taking out the main boss character, so that's an easy 3-star clear for us there. The last rift that we'll need to go over in today's video is, of course, the final level 62 survival rift where we need to defeat M.O.D.O.K. And this one is a relatively easy fight on its own, but the technicality of getting the 3-star clear can prove to be a little bit of a challenge, especially if you have a high-level team. So your hit points will slowly drop in this fight, much like they did in the earlier rift that we saw, and you can heal your teammates up by dealing attack damage to either the grunts or the main boss character that we're needing to take out. And you cannot revive teammates once they have been incapacitated. So do be cautious of that. In order to get this clear, you need to get through it with no team members incapacitated, get through it once, and then the third, which is technically the 2nd clear condition, or the 2nd star that's listed, is, in my opinion, the most difficult of the ones to get, because we have to defeat 80 enemies, and only 8 of these aim soldiers will spawn in at a time. So what I had to do to get this clear is I had to bring in an under-leveled team, deliberately knock down the rest of my characters, and then just wait for enough aim soldiers to cycle in for us to get that clear. But that is what we need to know or talk about for the rifts of today's video. So if you found today's video helpful or informative, please feel free to leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily content, and we'll see you tomorrow with the next episode of our Marvel Avengers for PS4 playthrough. Thanks again for watching, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day.